Good morning, Ratman. I'm your host, 3 Arm Che, and joining me is my co-host, who is 100% an app human. Just don't look into it. And welcome to the ADHD podcast. Will we stay on topic, or will I have to cut out 40 minutes to make it watchable? Tune in to find out.
40 minutes, that's optimistic.
It's usually about 40 minutes. Hey, editing room Che here, just to quickly interject. Something went wrong with Corgi's audio during this recording. It seems like Audacity reset her settings, so her audio is super blown out. I tried to fix what I could, but I have no training in audio. I don't know how to fix it too well. What I did manage to fix, it was still super blown out, so I'm using her Discord audio, her backup Discord audio that we record just in case these problems happen. It's still a bit blown out because it seems like there was also something wrong with her microphone. So you just kind of have to bear with it. Sorry about that. It's as fixed as I am capable of fixing it currently. Anyway, thank you. Enjoy the show. It's pretty consistently about 30 to 40 minutes that I have to cut out. Some of it gets put on at the end, but...
Well, at least we got some of it out. We tried to do 2 attempts, but got carried away talking about X-Men.
Yeah, we started recording, and then about 20 minutes later, we actually started recording. Because you have friends with terrible X-Men takes.
Good friends.
Now, Corgi.
Nah.
Did you know that mice are responsible for the assassination of several world presidents?
Where are you going with this?
Just as an established fact. Anyway, with that out of the way, I do have to disclose that this message is paid for by the Rat Party. The Rat Party would also like you to comment and subscribe. And like.
And also share. Let us into your rat holes.
Yes. Share.
Share.
Hey, Corgi.
Spread the plague. Yes, that is me.
Genestealer Cults. Do you like Lovecraft?
Oh, come on, you already know the answer to that.
Do you like cults?
Well, being a fan of Lovecraft kind of makes you into a cultist, so yeah.
Do you like eldritch horrors?
Oh, always.
Do you like the proletariat rising up against the bourgeoisie to overthrow the shackles of oppression? Do you like cults?
What?
The Genestealer Cults.
What is this? Warhammer and peace? That actually might be the best joke I've ever made.
No, because it didn't make me laugh, and you've made 5 jokes that have made me laugh the 6 years I've known you.
Yeah, and one of them wasn't even recorded.
Yeah.
So shameful.
I think that was the best joke you made, because I was in tears laughing at that. I laughed at that for a good 2 minutes.
Was it the one where it was like, I love all of my children, except you.
Yeah, it was the Andorran one.
Yes. Just because I love that from, what was it? Tom Scar's One Man 30 Impressions. No, everybody turn to Paige. Nobody likes you, Paige. Fucking one of my favorites.
It's also a line from Arrested Development, which is, I love all my children equally, and then it cuts to Lucille being...
I don't care for him.
30 minutes later, just being, I don't care for Job.
Yeah. I love Lucille Bluth. Rest in peace.
So, this episode is going to have something of a spoiler warning for the book Day of Ascension. Just a quick review of that book. It was really good. I think it helped that it was short. It was... Well, I listened to the audio book and it was about 6 hours long, but because I listened to things at... I usually listen to things at 2 times speed, but the book I was listening to it at 1.2 times speed. So it was only 5 hours long.
You're such a freak.
You can listen to those books at 3.5 times speed, which is insane. But
Yeah, and then it'll sound like I'm being fucking read to by a chipmunk.
When I had to find a specific quote, and I wrote the chapter that the quote was in, but I didn't write the time, because there's a bunch of quotes from that book that are in this episode, and I wrote the chapter and time as they came up. And when I got to that, I just wrote the chapter, so I had to listen to the entire chapter at 3.5 times speed just to find the quote, because I wasn't going to sit there and listen to a 25-minute chapter to find the specific quote. It turned that chapter to 5 minutes long. It was fun.
It must be nice. being able to hear things going fast and still understand each
I
word.
couldn't understand the words that they were saying until like I could understand like every third word, and then once every third word sounded about right, I'm like, I think this was the quote. So then I went back to 1.2 times speed.
And this is the one by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Yes, but it is a really good book. It was good that it was short, and it gave a very good insight into the Genestealer cults. We aren't going to get too much into the plot of it, but as I said, there will be reading some direct quotes from it that explain things.
Am I meant to have read the book? Do we have a book club now?
No, but we could start a book club, but no.
I don't know how to read.
That's why I listen to audiobooks.
I don't know how to listen. Dude, I'm hearing impaired.
Yeah.
What am I going to fucking hear? Static?
Put headphones on. I'm sure there's like a device that can loop into hearing aids.
Yeah, actually, fun fact, there is. It's this little chip that you put on your dominant ear, like your dominant hearing aid, and you can connect Bluetooth to that. However, I fucking lost mine. I don't know where it is.
Also, I've been to your room. You've got so many books. Just read a book. Granted, you can't buy half of these books. They just like Black Library just fucking doesn't sell books. They're like, oh, you should have read that book when it came out 5 years ago. I guess you're gonna have to spend $200 to get it on Amazon. Nice.
Well, actually, $14 for the ebook on Kindle.
That's why I'm listening to ebooks. And also, I don't like reading. I like doing multiple things at a time. And I can go for a walk while listening to a book, or I can walk my dog while listening to a book, or I could be on a train while listening to a book.
Or you can date your wife while listening to a book.
I tried to do driving while listening to a book, and it's way too hard. It's like I have to focus on the road and the book at the same time, and it's like, oh, I can't split my focus this good. Either I'm going to miss information or I'm going to crash my car.
And the worst part is, you would probably just be stuck at that indecision of like, I'm either going to crash or I'm going to miss the really good part of this book. It's just back, forth, back, forth.
No, I just pulled over and swapped to music. This was originally supposed to come out like a month and a half ago, so I wrote a response to a comment that someone made a month and a half ago instead of responding because it was like a really solid comment. But now it's been like a month and a half and it's just kind of weird to respond to it in a video. But anyway, someone on the Tyranid video that came out put in a fucking essay in the comments, just like point by point everything we said, either their personal opinions or what we said, or correcting information that I got wrong. And it was split into two comments. And I've pinned that comment. Go check it out. It was actually like a really solid comment. Like, this isn't a complaint. I read that and just went, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. And the writer went, oh, that's a good comment. Guy also insulted me, saying it's a shame that I abandoned my desire to own a Carnifex and be boring. And I laughed so hard at that because, yes, that is 100% accurate. In a world full of interesting factions, I went, I like the army dudes. And now I just collect guard. But to start, some groundwork. Mm-hmm. What is a Genestealer?
Presumably someone who steals genes and hijacks them to make bigger, better things. Like fucking David in Alien.
You didn't say what you were supposed to say. You were supposed to say, I don't know, which then the joke would be, oh, I was asking you. I don't know the answer. Well, that's the end of the episode, folks. See you next week.
Yeah, even after all these years of our friendship, you predict me 50% of the time.
God damn it. You ruined the opening joke. We're not going back and fixing it.
That's pretty much the summary.
You ruined the episode.
You ruined the joke. That's it. Show's over. It's cancelled.
This has been the final episode of Good Morning Radman.
And the final day of my friendship with this crazy woman.
So the Genestealers, right? They are
steal genes. But not
kind of. They are the frontline units of the Tyranids. So they are in fact Tyranids.
Oh.
And when a Genestealer gets cut off from the hive mind, its genetic instinct kicks in, where it goes into hiding until it reaches a planet with a sizable population, usually hiding on a spaceship or debris, possibly just like lone survivors of an failed invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And Genestealers barely need anything to survive and can just wait for decades. They can just chill out in a cargo pod for decades.
Just waiting, biding their time, relaxing.
Yep. So then, The soon-to-be patriarch will stalk the dark, where the dregs of society are, picking off the most vulnerable. They are
Oh,
then
that's mean.
they are then infected with the Genestealer's kiss via an ovipositor. Ovipositor? I know the word, I just don't know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, it's ovipositor.
Oh yeah, it is ovipositor. I just typoed it. Nice.
So you said Genestealer's kiss?
Yep.
They fucking lay eggs in you?
Kind of. Not really.
That's what an ovipositor is.
Yeah, it's not eggs. It embeds a parasitic organism that alters their DNA and creates a psychic link in the Genestealer. So it's not an
It's a
egg.
facehugger.
No, because it doesn't grow into something. It doesn't.
Oh.
It's not like a fucking chest burster. It just you get a parasite in your body that alters your DNA. It's less chest burster and more the black goo.
Ah, thank you. That's an infection that rewrites you, so.
Yeah. And it also creates a psychic link to the Genestealer. If, however, this process is interrupted, it does alter their DNA and give them the same Genestealer cultist urges, but without the psychic link.
Just imagine one day you're chilling, you felt this weird thing touch you, and you're just like, okay, maybe I just had a really, really creepy fucking nightmare. And then you go around, and all of a sudden, as you're just going about getting groceries, you just hear the voices in your head, and you're like, I've lost it. Followed by a deeper voice, like fucking, it's like, oh.
So, as an aside, the Space Marines are also mostly immune to the mind control. And there is a chapter called
Because they don't have minds?
Huh? No, just because they're strong of will and probably, what's it called?
Sorry.
Armor of Contempt. Which is just, it's literally hate the thing so fucking hard that its mind control doesn't work. That it's a Space Marine quote unquote technology. It's just like I haven't played Space Marine 2 because I didn't really enjoy Space Marine 1 that much, and it just looked like they were doing Space Marine 1 again. But I have been watching some of the cutscenes, and when Calgar shows up and they're fighting the Chaos, he's just like, steal yourself with the armor of contempt. Just like, yeah, okay, fair enough. It's just, hey, these guys are going to use warp bullshit. If you just hate them so hard, the warp bullshit won't work.
That's some fucking orc logic right there.
Yeah, and it's correct. It does work.
I hate this guy so fucking much, I'm immune to their shit.
There's also the point where, he puts out like this slowed, like the Chaos puts out this slowed spell, and the main characters hide behind a tank so they don't get hit with it, while the rest of the Space Marines are all like slowed. And then Calgar is just standing there and just goes, no, fuck you. And granted, there's also a degree of his iron halo working because you can see it glowing behind him. But he's just like, no, fuck you. And just walks out of the spell. It's just like, I refuse to let this affect me. Your magic is bullshit and I refuse it. And it just doesn't work on him.
It's a fucking clip from Clone High where it's like, I like your words, funny man, or something. And it's just like, I don't like your words, funny man. And that's just all the buff they need.
Like everyone, I have fallen in love with the Dreadnought in that game. Where is Magnus? Is he here? It's just like, bro, you are not in a fight against Magnus, but I respect your intense contempt for Magnus that you just want to kill him. You want to kill this man so hard. You are just a Dreadnought.
Oh, I'm trying to think of a comparison, but my brain is just empty.
When isn't it empty?
No.
So there is, back on topic, there is a Space Marine chapter called The Size of the Emperor, where a large amount of them were Genestealer cultists that could just resist the hive mind, but they also wore psychic dampeners to make damn sure that they weren't going to get overpowered. The chapter is still around, but I'm pretty sure all the Genestealer cultists are dead.
Oh. Well, not all of them. Surely there's like one or two that's still like hiding.
No, they die in a Tyranid invasion.
Oh, okay. Fucking spoiler alert.
I don't know. There's Size of the Emperor that appear in Belisarius' Call, The Great Work, which is apparently a good book. I'll definitely check it out before we do a Belisarius Call episode. I love Call. Anyway, so once the Genestealer infects their first person, their body evolves to be larger, and their brains grow, and they gain telepathic abilities. And it gains the ability to just psychically dominate someone's will, evolving into a patriarch. And
I see no downsides. I thought he was on a unicycle for a second.
There's also, as an aside, a Broodlord, which is a member of the Genestealers. There is no one knows what the difference between a patriarch and a Broodlord are. They look the same, and when I was like doing the research, it was just like, yeah, they're kind of the same thing with two different names. I was like, cool, thanks, great. But they mostly appear in the Space Hulk game, I believe. The tabletop game. Space Hulk. It's a tabletop game.
Oh, I thought it was like fucking Warhammer's version of Tony Hawk.
No, it's Terminators versus Genestealers.
Oh, that does sound nice.
Yeah. So the patriarchs are giant. It says they are twice the size of a Space Marine, and there doesn't actually seem to be an actual number to how big they are. Same with the Space Marines, but the general agreement is 2.4 meters or 8 feet tall for a Space Marine. So 4.5 meters or 16 feet tall.
They don't seem that big to me.
That's pretty fucking big.
Well, to be fair, everything's pretty fucking big to me. I'm tiny.
Yes, you are. At that size, they can just rip apart light vehicles. Just like...
Cars.
Yeah, you drive a car into it, it just grabs it and rips it apart like the fucking Hulk from The Incredible Hulk.
Not from any other material?
I mean specifically the movie where he grabs a car and rips it in half and uses it as boxing gloves. Great scene.
Okay, remind me to watch that later. That sounds great.
He might do that in a comic, but I don't remember a specific instance of him doing exactly that, of ripping a car in half. I think he rips a Humvee in half and uses it as boxing gloves.
Still, big car.
So, here's a quote. To gaze into the eyes of a patriarch is to gaze into the void and feel a fraction of the tyrannid hive mind staring back.
Ooh, love that.
This is a Lovecraftian experience, which, as someone pointed out, is called ontological shock. And another quote, one who faces such terrible power realizes that there are no more than a speck of cosmic dust adrift in an uncaring universe. Their shattered mind is then easily bound.
Yeah.
They might still be able to resist the patriarch, but will be maddened by the experience and just brushed off by the rest of society as another madman who just simply couldn't handle the nightmare existence that is the Imperium. I, on the other hand, would just simply not go mad. Some people...
That's a skill issue.
Some people can also just not go mad, but will be killed by the Genestealer. So the trick that I would do is to pretend that I've gone mad, but not actually be mad. And that way, the Genestealers let me go.
Pretend.
So they being the patriarch and not the madman, can, alongside with the Magus, create psychic familiars.
I just hear psychic familiar and I just imagine, oh, you mean like an imaginary friend?
So...
Oh my god, I hate them.
Yeah. They're weird little Genestealer dudes that do stuff. Those...
Yeah, Jesus, I just don't like them.
Those that it does successfully dominate become part of the brood mind. Ugh. An isolated hive mind centered around the patriarch as the core voice that drives them forward. Here's a kind of quote about that. This is from the book, Day of Ascension. Feeling a mad strength guide her hand, and more than that, she felt all the others, her kin, her congregation. As she struck, so they rallied, as though her hand were knitting them all back to a unified mass.
Oh, fuck yeah, though. So full on, literally just like, guess what? I'm a priest now. Deal with it.
Yeah, she becomes a Magus during the story. Spoilers, as I said, for the story. The main character, who was a child, it slowly becomes apparent as the story goes on that she is a Magus. Also, if the population is high enough on a planet, and the population centers are far enough, 2 patriarchs can be created on one planet. However, the cults will occasionally just fight each other over resources, because they are desperately trying to get resources.
Yeah, that tracks.
So, when the infected have children, they give birth to the first generation of cultists. Their children are deformed beings who are described as hideous. Common deformities are bulbous heads, needle teeth, extra arms with claws, purple skin, and tail spikes.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Most of them, in fact, have 3 arms. They hang out in the dark places, avoiding detection from normal humans, and they murk anyone who gets a bit too close to figuring it all out. However, they don't just kill anyone who gets close. If people keep going down one specific alley and dying, then it does raise some suspicion.
Yeah, I'd be a little fucking wary if it's like, yeah, dude, don't go down there. That's disappearance land. It's like, what do you mean disappearance land? I mean, you go there, you disappearance.
Yeah. Speaking
Never said I
of,
was smart.
I found out the other day that my favorite cafe closed down and is now a cocktail bar, which is lame. You might be
Downgrade.
wondering, how is this related? It was down a dark back alley behind a bunch of restaurants, round a corner, down a flight of stairs into a basement with very little signage. Who knows why it went out of business?
That sounds like a front, man.
It was the kind of place that would get murked by a first-gen cultist.
Was the coffee good?
Yes, it was really good. It was the best coffee I had ever had in my city. That's why it was my favorite cafe. They once had a sign out the front that just said, "Good coffee down the dark, dank alleyway. What's the worst that could happen?" Yeah.
And you saw that sign, and that's what made you go,
I found them before they had any signage.
Oh my god.
There wasn't even
exploring.
like they had a sandwich board out the front of the alley, but they also eventually had like a sign on the top at the front of the alley, which was great. It's just a dark alley that just said Bean on the top, and you had to understand that Bean was a cafe in the alley, down in a basement. And for a while, it was also through a construction site. You had to go down the alley through a construction site, then down a flight of stairs.
You went on a fucking journey just for good coffee, and I can't even blame you for it.
Great cafe. Shame it's gone.
Big shame.
But as Ascension Day looms, the first gen begin to mutate and take up more Tyranid biology, getting stabby hands, whipping hands, acid spit, and tentai faces. They're mind flayer looking losers. Sometimes they develop these mutations because the cult is stressed and probably needs to murk a lot of folks real soon. The cult view these metamorphs as saints, blessed by the Emperor.
Wait, sorry, hang on. So these cults, they work for Tyranids, yet they still believe in the Emperor?
Yep, we'll get to that.
Alright.
They will go out and hypnotize more people, and their kids are the second generation. Hunchbacks who can have up to 6 limbs. They share their parents' eyes and mouths, but they can also speak Low Gothic, which is the language. It's Low Gothic and High Gothic. They don't speak English. Which is like...
The difference between fucking Claire's and Hot Topic.
It's like
Low
discount
Gothic.
German. Not German, sorry. I think the name comes from German because there's Low German and High German. But I could be pulling that out of my ass.
Stop putting things up there then.
It's like discount Latin. Like, you see it and you're like, that's Latin, and then you like look at it and it's like, none of these are Latin words, but they sound Latin.
Full on, like, the difference between Pig Latin and regular Latin.
I guess, but Pig Latin is just swapping a letter around.
Yeah, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, but it's like Space Marines is Adeptus Astartes, which those aren't words.
But they sound right.
Yeah, they sound like Latin. They're not Latin. But they are intelligent enough to understand the society they are put in and how to pass through it. Due to their increased strength, are usually put in mines or other industrial jobs. Here's an aside, just so you haven't asked this question. I was going to bring it up if you asked the question, but you haven't. Which is, how the fuck do people not see these people and go, hey, Genestealers?
I just assume because they like having slave things.
No, because there's so many... The Imperium sucks so fucking hard that so many people that live in hive cities or just like general cities, they're all mutants because they just have to live around toxic chemicals all the time. Everyone is some degree of mutant. So like if you see a guy with 3 arms, you're like, yeah. I saw like 10 other guys with 3 arms on a different planet. People just are so frequent in mutation. Oh, that guy's purple? Yeah, that checks out. I saw a guy the other day that was green. Like,
Just a skill issue.
Yeah, mutations are so common, and they're, if they stabilize, they become abhumans, which is, a stable mutation, which is where your Ogrins, your Ratlings, your Squats, they all come in.
Fuck you!
Hmm?
You called me that.
Yeah. That was the
Boss.
joke. The joke was, you're an abhuman. Just don't look into it. Meaning,
Aw.
you're actually a gene stealer.
Oh,
So
I'm an idiot.
people see these abhumans. Yeah, we know. People see these abhumans and they go, "Oh, they're just mutants." They just go, "Oh, they're just random mutants." But in the book, the Day of Ascension, the guy who's the main sort of uh, secondary protagonist, but also kind of an antagonist. But he's an AdMech guy. He becomes aware there's a gene stealer infestation because he's walking around these poor people. And he's just like, that guy's got 3 arms, that guy's got 3 arms. All of these people have 3 arms. Every single one of these people has the exact same mutation. This is a stable mutation. Stable mutations don't happen on this planet. Every mutation is different. These are too stable. What's going on here? So he like thinks back and then he remembers reading about the gene stealers and goes, these are all gene stealer mutations. These are all gene stealers. Cool. Great. Cool. I'm surrounded by gene stealers. Fucking awesome. This is a great situation that I've been thrown in.
The one time being a nerd saves your ass.
So the 3rd generation, at a glance, just seem normal. But looking close, you'll see their ridged heads and purplish skin, and sometimes they have more than 2 arms. The 4th generation are just regular human bartenders. This is where they start to gain power, as this 4th generation might birth psychics and just like 18 charisma characters who gain political power or other leadership positions. Right? This is where the Megas comes in. We'll talk a little bit more about the Megas a bit later. So, then the 5th generation is where it gets good. What do you think the 5th generation will be?
I'm going to imagine just fucking buff as shit.
No, they're just regular old gene stealers.
Just regular fellas.
Yep, they just give birth to gene stealers again.
But without the horrifying first and second gen.
They just give birth to those guys. And their parents see them as little babies and not 4-arm xenomorphs. And the circle of life begins again. That was a shit joke. Anyway. The cult will then send these new pure strain gene stealers onto ships to go find new worlds and start a whole new cult.
The circle of...
So there are also aberrants. Aberrants can be born at any stage, and no one knows why. Here are some pictures of aberrants. They just show up. The exact quote is, as a result of crossbreeding, dark experiments, warp storms, or something even stranger. In the one in the book got science to life by a biophagus, which are cult scientists / doc that help the cult while also using their abilities to infect non-cultists. They also have little familiars that help them do their science work. Sometimes a patriarch will make a little familiar goblin and give it to an aberrant. And that the little goblin will in turn fuck with its DNA to turn it into an abominant. And the aberrants follow it into battle, seeing it as a saintly figure. There's an aberrant and its little goblin guy.
Oh, I'd say only a face a mother could love, but only her faces.
They are sturdy motherfuckers.
Yeah, they look like... No, I hate them. I just hate them.
The one in the book just keeps getting shot and just goes, nah! Just keeps... Like, it's just like, oh yeah, and it burned off its chunks of its flesh. Then its flesh came back.
And that's how you know you're fucked.
Eventually goes toe-to-toe with a Castellan robot. And they get into a big fight. That's where it starts running into problems, is once it's fighting a Castellan robot.
Just that's the only one.
Yeah. Just Skitari couldn't do anything. But a giant robot that's the same size of it, yeah, that causes problems.
That's the same logic in fucking Fallout, where they're like, yeah, let's make this giant Liberty robot and just send it off to get rid of our enemies. And it kind of worked. Oh no, now I'm imagining a Genestealer and a Centaur. The Fallout 3 Centaur, mind. And I...
So as an aside, here's a quote. Though it obeys a loosely cyclical structure, many offshoots and bastardizations occur, resulting in a spectrum of anatomies from the outwardly wholesome to the truly bizarre. Now, contextually, I know what that means. However, it does kind of read funny, like these Genestealers are so cute and wholesome and lovely.
They're just babies. Terrifying babies.
Are you a 4th generation cultist?
I don't have to answer that.
So where does the cult come in? The cult part come in. The cult worship the gods that they worship as their base culture. So in the case, they do worship the Emperor. However, it has Genestealer-esque qualities, such as the four-armed Emperor, the many-handed god. They also worship the Emperor's angels, known as the Star Children. Can you guess what Can you guess who the Star Children are?
The children?
No, the Tyranids.
Oh, that makes more sense. So I was just thinking of fucking Sanguinius, and I'm like, yeah, I'd worship him too.
They believe that the Star Children will arrive on the day of Ascension and lift them into the light. They make statues of the Emperor, but to show how the Emperor loves them all, they give him a couple extra arms, and to show that he looks like them, they change up some of his features to look more like their totally normal human mutations. They also paint murals of the many-handed Emperor surrounded by millions of stars the cult will one day join.
Oh, how sweet. Not at all horrifying and bleh.
So, as the generations go by, the cult embeds themselves into society, corrupting or joining the guard, getting into the higher ranks, corrupting government officials, and in some cases, kings and queens. And if they do that, it's all over. They basically win. They are now the king of the planet. They use maguses to get into the difficult to reach places, those high in aristocracy, but also just street preachers, be it religious or political, to lure more people into the cult. Also, as an aside, maguses hate each other. This isn't relevant, but it's just a funny fact. They also send out pure strain Genestealers into other cities and planets, which is especially easy if they take an agricultural world.
Yes. Oh, is it agri?
Because there are so few people that they just basically take over a bunch of farms and send their shipments to grain to the other world. But it's not grain, it's Genestealers.
It was Genestealers all along. Always was.
As I said in the book, how the AdMech guy starts fucking talking to the Genestealers. There's a part where he's making demands and is in complete control of the situation. The cult needs to do what he says, and the Magus looks him in the eye and asks for the release of a singular prisoner, and it goes through his whole thought process of, seriously, I'm in charge here. Why do you think you can ask this of me? How stupid are you to think that you have any place to ask this of me? And then he just agrees to do it. And then, sends the release codes. And after that, he's just like, why did I do that? No, seriously. Why did I do that? They're not psychic. They can't be psychic. They're Xenos. He's just like, I'm so confused about what just happened here. I was in control, and then I just got run around by this old woman who just like, hey, can you release this guy? And I went, yep, okay.
It's a really nice old lady, but it's not an old lady. It's a Tyrannid.
Well, she is an old lady. She's just an old lady with psychic powers and works for the Tyranids. The Magus are considered the second in command, and when Imperial assassins attempt to take out the cult hierarchy, they aim for the Patriarch, obviously. But then, if they can't get to the Patriarch, they aim for the Magus. The Magus can also just kind of psychically override members of the cult if they don't do what they say.
Don't happens. Turn their brains into soup.
Yeah. It happens in the book, but I forgot to save the time, so I can't pull the exact line. Also, it doesn't work. She specifically tries to... Someone's like, I'm going to do this thing. And then she's like, I don't want you to do this thing. And the guy goes, it narrates it as just like, she felt the pull to do this thing and do exactly what the Magus asked her to do. She doesn't, though. She just goes, no, I'm going to do my own thing. She just completely ignores it. On the topic of sending out Genestealers, sometimes there might be small isolated cults, like that of an entire spaceship, or just members of a cult on a planet will hop on a spaceship and then just fly to Tiamat, where they disappear.
Sorry,
Yeah.
remind me what Tiamat is again, because I'm just thinking of the dragon.
It's that system that's just controlled by the Tyranids, and no one can go in, and they just are doing something on a planet. And the psychic scream from the Tiamat system is getting louder and louder.
Yeah.
Just occasionally, Genestealer Cults just go to Tiamat.
I really hope that in the future we find out it's just like a giant biological mech suit, just like a Zord.
It's seemingly a psychic weapon. They're building a psychic weapon. Every single time they expand the lore of Tiamat, it just sounds more and more like a psychic weapon. But they, like, presumably their biomass is just being added to whatever it is that they're building. And that's how they just keep getting more biomass for Tiamat. You know, they've burned out everything that's already on the planet, so they're just getting Genestealer Cults to bring them in. Anyway,
it sounds like a Brethren rune to me, man.
The Calomorph is one of exactly 2 Genestealer Cult models that I like, kind of. We'll talk more about them like the other ones in the next episode. I wrote that before they announced more models. There's more than 2 now. There's also the newly announced model, and newly being like a couple months old, which was the one that you sent me earlier, Corgi, that is just absolutely fucked.
Mr. Brain Man.
Yeah, the Mr. Brain Man. But here's the Calomorph. The Calomorph is a cowdoy and a folk legend. Hero of the...
Cowdoy?
Yeah, cowdoy.
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 With a D.
Cowdoy.
Cowdoy with a duh.
Stick 'em up, you dodgers. I'm a cowdoy. Anyway. The Calomorph is a cowdoy and a folk legend. A hero of the revolution fighting the authoritarian rule for the oppressed underclass of the cults, which is an interesting idea that they toy with exclusively within the pages of the Calomorph and nowhere else in the Codex. That this is just the people's revolution fighting... That this is this people's revolution fighting for a better... That's the sentence. I'm great at writing.
Did you have a stroke?
The Genestealer Cults is also like a people's revolution, and they are getting more than just the Genestealer cultists in to fight for a better world. I talk about this a little bit later, because it comes up in the book, and I have a specific quote from the book. But as far as the Codex goes, it just like mentions it as a thing in the Calomorph, and then just never mentions it again.
I'm just losing it over the fact that it's just a Tyranid cowboy.
Yeah, some people make kit bashes where they give him a cowboy hat.
He deserves one. He earned it.
So the Calomorph becomes this legend to the enemy as well. An anarchist trying to overthrow the government who inspires generations of revolution. Quote time. Smeared across the walls of countless underhive catacombs and high-rise spires is the same graffitied image of a cloaked, three-armed figure wielding a set of custom auto-stub pistols. He always stands defiant in the face of impossible odds.
I love that. So is he like rebelling against the hive mind?
No. He's a member of the hive mind.
Oh.
But they, like, the Calomorphs have this sort of like, they become this cult hero figure, which also, you know, despite the story, the Calomorph is very much a real thing. Like, it does exist. The Genestealers do create them. And it's genetically engineered to perfection. It's got slow time perception, pinpoint accuracy using enhanced sensors, and perfect balance and coordination. Unlike you.
Fuck you, accurate. Fuck you.
They also become this folk hero to non-Genestealers and wannabe revolutionary aristocrats who dress themselves to look like them. Just
people cosplay as
just a poncy aristocratic pricks just cosplay the Calomorph.
Isn't that kind of like if the Earl of Nottingham dressed as fucking Robin Hood?
More like the Pimpernel Scarlet. That's a reference to a show you haven't seen. Like, the Scarlet Pimpernel is a real person / book character.
Oh,
I don't remember.
The name of that sniper.
But there's a whole episode of Blackadder about the Scarlet Pimpernel. They're just like, oh, the Pimpernel Scarlet, and burned into my brain. I don't remember much of the plot of the episode, but I remember the aristocrats just going, oh yes, the Pimpernel Scarlet.
Well, it's also the name of a legendary sniper in Borderlands 2, the Pimpernel.
Yeah. So
Oh,
these aristocrats who want to be Kelemorphs follow their symbols down into the Underhive, falling right into the claws of the cult. And even slaves of the Imperium will sneak out radioactive material and make them into bullets that can pierce armor, and in doing so, sustaining lethal radiation dosage, and then making a pilgrimage to present the Kelemorph with the bullets. Like, people die, like, will willingly die to just help the Kelemorph.
honestly, I think I would too, just because it's just so funny to imagine.
The Kelemorph is so cool. Even the Kelemorph in Day of Ascension, she's like, there's a point where she's in a fight, and it's just like, oh yeah, she has a full, like, sniper rifle holding her in her hands, and she's shooting enemies at the distance. And then in her third hand, she just has a pistol, and she's just shooting everyone that comes near her.
That sounds awesome as hell.
But, so, once everything is in place, then everything kicks off. All at once, a plan centuries in the making. The Day of Ascension. Every cultist instantly flips, which in its own right is a shock and awe tactic. When half of a guardsman platoon all of a sudden just open fire on the other half, just causes immense chaos within the military of the city. And the early generations and mutants rise up from the Undercity, usually wielding mining equipment, leading to the Primus, a third or fourth gen, created specifically to lead this uprising. There's some other special units that specifically created. We're not going to talk about them because they weren't that interesting. Like the guy whose entire... He's a radio host. Granted, we should have probably talked about the radio host, but they have a unit that's a radio host. Cool. They have a guy who carries a flag. Cool. Fucking interesting characters to talk about.
Man.
Yeah. This uprising shatters the defense of the planet for the now approaching Tyranid Hive fleet. Usually, this uprising happens as the fleet is actually approaching the planet. However, sometimes the uprising just happens long before the Tyranids are due to arrive, because they ran out of ways to spread, or some outside force forced them into an early uprising, which is what happens in the
dickhead.
Yeah, that's what happens in the book. Is like they start kind of an uprising at the beginning of the book, and it's botched. The Kelemorph gets captured, and they're just like, "Yep, that was the beginning of the uprising, but it didn't work. So I don't know how long we're gonna have to do it." And then they're forced into an uprising, and people are like, "But the Star Children aren't coming," and the Magus is like, "Yeah, they're not, but we're in a situation where if we don't do our uprising now, we die. So I guess we're doing an uprising."
Like that fucking circle and triangle meme where it's like, fuck it, I guess we're doing uprisings now.
Yeah. So sometimes, however, and I'll talk about this a little more in the next episode, the Tyranids aren't even coming. This might happen because the Patriarch has somehow lost its connection to the hive mind and can't signal them, such as Warpstorm killed en route, Space ate them.
Space ate?
Yeah. You know, like maybe they were flying through a system and then the star exploded. Or, you know, sometimes in Warhammer, space just eats people. Space in Warhammer is not a benevolent entity. It is very much a malevolent entity and sometimes just eats people. And then they're not even like going through the warp. But they might just fly past a warp storm and then the warp storm grabs them and teleports them to the other side of the galaxy. Or they just like never really leave. Like, as we discussed on the Tyranids episode, the Tyranids are immune to the warp. They won't get any negative effects from the warp, and the warp doesn't eat them per se, it will spit them out. But, as discussed, the warp isn't chronological, so it might, spit them out immediately for the warp, which, in real space, is like 10,000 years in the future. So...
in other words, it's like, finally, we've done it, we've eradicated every last Tyranid. Why is that boss music? And they just look over at one of the fucking warp holes and just like, no, please.
Yeah,
Please.
imagine if like Cadia, rest in peace. But like, back when Cadia was around, Tyranids came out of the Eye of Terror, and they were just like, oh, this is interesting. This is an unfortunate development. We've spent our planet's entire history preparing for a chaos invasion, and fucking Tyranids show up. Great. So if space ate the Tyranid High Fleet, or for whatever reason they can't signal them, they will instead reach out and conquer as many star systems as they can to produce a large enough psychic beacon to catch the attention of the hive mind. And sometimes the hive mind leaves them on red. More on that in the next Genestealer episode. Sometimes the cult keeps calling the Genestealers, and the cult keeps calling the Tyranids, and the Tyranids keep going, why the fuck won't they just leave us alone, please? I've been ignoring their phone calls for 5,000 years. Shut up.
What I'm more imagining is oh god, that actually, what's the other one? Make Some Noise bit where it's like Santa who still thinks their dad's coming to pick them up. It's like, my dad's gonna be here any day now. That's just the Genestealers like, Dad's coming, isn't he? Dad.
Yeah. The patriarch lacks the intelligence to comprehend the fact that the Tyranids don't want them back, and they just keep calling. The Tyranids keep not answering, so they just spend 5,000 years repeatedly calling the Tyranids, being like, please, please, please.
Dad, are you coming home with the milk? Dad? Honestly, if I was a Tyranid, I would probably just show up just to kill them all, just to be like, shut up.
Sometimes the Tyranids show up and like yoink the cultists and then just leave the Genestealers because they're just like, no, fuck you. You suck. We hate you. Leaving the Genestealers behind to be like, what the fuck? As I said, we'll talk about the Yimgal the next episode. The Yimgal and the Mouse Rain. The Mouse Rain are a newer one.
I have no idea what that word is. The nim.
So, this revolution doesn't usually consist of just the cult. Regular people do just join the revolution without an understanding of the situation that has caused it. Got a quote here. What mattered was they were gone. Sometimes it was by the hands of the faithful, who did away with them, and sometimes it was merely those who they had brutalized and worked to an early grave, those who might not have heard the call of the congregation if they had ever been treated like human beings, rather than components in a machine. So just when they were doing a revolution in the book, they're just like, yeah, decent chunk of the revolution was people who just went, oh, we fight in the AdMech? Fucking awesome, let's go.
Fuck it, we ballin'.
But I glossed over this and then just forgot to talk about it. The Genestealers usually fight with mining equipment. At least the earlier factions fight with mining equipment. The third and fourth generations usually fight with like actual guns and shit. Because the mining equipment is very easy for them to get. And mining equipment is very powerful. Like, you know, you can just get someone to run up against a tank that's, you know, it's meant to destroy fucking rock. And it can just punch a holes in the steel of a tank, or, you know, the plascrete or ceramite. It even says, you know, a Genestealer cultist, just a regular old Genestealer cultist, which granted are hardy and stronger than a normal human being, can just run up on a space marine and just use a drill to drill through the ceramite armor of a space marine.
Oh shit.
That is definitely a thing they can do. I was reading the Warhammer subreddit, and someone was just like, why do Adeptus Custodes have dreadnoughts? Why is that a thing that they have? And someone said, the question is not, why do Adeptus Custodes have dreadnoughts? It's, what can cause an Adeptus Custodes to have to go into a dreadnought? And then the reply was, yo, that one Genestealer cultist with a drill hiding behind the corner. Just like, yeah. Being a perfectly engineered super soldier will only get you so far when you've got a guy with an anti-armor drill who just jumps onto you and drills your fucking skull.
The drill dozer flashbacks.
Yeah. Where the fuck is the drill dozer from?
IRL. It was that guy.
No, that's Killdozer.
Oh.
What the fuck is the drill dozer?
Deep Rock Galactic?
Yes. Yeah, rock and stone.
Reconcile, bitches.
So, once the planet is theirs, and the hive mind descends from the heavens, cheers erupt through the streets as the Star Children have arrived to usher their ascension into light. The Star Children unleash their dogs of war, assisting the cult in the revolution. And once the enemies are eradicated, the cult celebrates and welcomes the Star Children with open arms.
One second.
Finally,
$10 that the fucking Star Children betray them.
So, once the enemies are eradicated, the cult celebrates and welcomes the Star Children with open arms, and finally ascends into the arms of the many-handed Emperor. The brood mind is subsumed into the greater hive mind, severing the patriarchal connection to the cult. Cultists sing and cheer as they become biomass.
So technically, yes.
Some cultists knew exactly what was coming. This violent ascension wasn't a surprise. They had known a long time, and they had time to accept it. And even when the connection is severed, they aren't scared. They welcome the embrace. Because really, at its core, the cult never lied to them. They were promised the Star Children would descend, and they would become one with them, which is exactly what happened. Your soul returns to the warp, and your body becomes one with the Tyranid hive, turned into biomass. I got quotes. I got a lot of quotes, and one of them is really fucking long. So get ready for quote time. All of this is from Day of Ascension.
No complaints here, because I'm currently drawing something that is very messy, but honestly, I think the message will get across.
Two of these are a conversation between two people. And so, but is it true though? Is there an emperor with his angels, or is it a devouring monster the tech priest told me of? The woman's face was calm, peaceful even. What makes you think they're two different things? So that was the main character, Davian, talking to the Kelamorph. No, the Kelamorph, Sakiri. Now, this is Davian talking to the main pseudo-villain sort of protagonist, the member of the AdMech, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a villain, but you spend an awful lot of time with him as kind of the protagonist as well. But he's also a prick. He's the one that causes this whole thing to explode.
Of course.
You're making a mistake. The things you want to call to, they will consume you. They're not angels. They're monsters. Her face was beatifically calm as she answered. What makes you think they're two different things?
She does have a point, though.
Yeah. They're very aware of what is about to happen. And then, finally, this is a big one. This was the quote that really just, made me get the Genestealers. This line came up in the book, and I was just like, oh, I get it now. I completely understand what they're going for.
Joining the cult today.
This is a fucking long one.
Let's
see if I can get it in one take.
Drink some water first.
I already did.
Drink it again.
She could hear the singing, just an echo of it, coursing in her blood. She thrilled to it, even as it terrified her. Xenos taint, Triskelion had said, and she had an image of vast wings unfurling in the void, ravenous jaws and segmented limbs. Hunger, for all that song was about. Hunger. It was terrible, but it was beautiful. To be part of something greater, to go on forever and better the angels in all their fearful glory than the engines of the tech priests. If we are to be ground up and devoured, I choose the jaws. Death, Davian cried out. Death is the wage of every life. Death when their machines crush you. Death when their poisons sicken you. Death when you can't work anymore and they cut your food and water in the name of their efficiency. We all die, friends, so let us die in glorious struggle. Let us die with our hands about their throats. Let our deaths go to feed something grander than their furnaces. Not their filthy machines, not their hollow creed, for if we live and die for the Emperor, then the Emperor's angels shall carry us with them forever, and in that way, we never die.
Honestly, baller as shit.
It was baller. It was like, holy fuck. Also, Davian's 12. This is a 12-year-old child.
Jesus.
I don't know exactly how old she is, but she is somewhere on the spectrum of child to teenager. She's incredibly young.
Preteen.
And she basically leads this revolution because she's supposed to be the next Magus.
God, well, that makes even more sense why they would go for her. Children are so much easier to manipulate than an adult.
Well, they're also born into it.
Ah, that too.
She's a 4th gen, because she's a Magus.
Oh, right, yeah. I already forgot about that. Because I'm currently drawing something that is so fucking stupid.
But yeah, you know, they're just, they know what's up, and they go, yeah, no, we're okay with this.
Better to die at the hands of a monster you know than the monster that keeps pretending it's not
Yeah.
a monster.
So now for some old lore.
Mm-hmm.
They used to not be tied to the Tyranids. I think that might have like worked better, but the old lore was still kind of wank because it was just an alien chaos cult. So it was just aliens who worship chaos. I think if you just straight up had them as a Lovecraftian cult that worshipped something that wasn't Nids and wasn't the Chaos Gods, like it could still be a chaos entity like the Watcher in the Rain or some shit. But it'd be more interesting than the Nids. Like as much as the book made me get them, I think it'd be more interesting if they just didn't have any ties to the Nids whatsoever. But also not if they just worshipped like Chaos Undivided or the 4 Chaos Gods, or one of the 4 Chaos Gods rather. Chaos Undivided is the term for whenever someone worships just chaos or works for just chaos. They're not like, oh, you're working for specifically Khorne or Slanesh. You know, Horus was Demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided.
Yeah, in other words, just you don't seek a specific chaos, you seek all chaos.
Yeah, so Perturabo and Lorgar are Chaos Undivided currently. They are the 2, you know, Demon Primarchs that are still alive, who they work for Chaos, but they work for Chaos Undivided. So the next part's from the original script, and it's just kind of funny. So here it is. This was the original script before I delayed this to read an entire book. They do have their own whole book, Day of Ascension, that fleshes them out, and it's told from their perspective, so it might redeem them, and I kind of want to read it, but it's only 200 pages, so it's not a massive undertaking, but at the same time, I didn't find them interesting. Is buying and reading a 200-page book going to make me like them, or am I going to come out of it feeling the exact same way? Turns out the answer to that was yes.
And also, yes.
It was going to make me like them. I did a full 180 on them. Still think they could be improved, but I'm glad I delayed this episode to read Day of Ascension. I read the Codex and went from I fucking hate the Genestealer Cults. They're boring as shit. I did not enjoy researching this episode whatsoever. And then I read Day of Ascension and went, wow, I fucking love the Genestealer Cults. They're cool. And from a gameplay perspective, they also seem interesting. And from a model perspective, they have barely any good models. And I've never really heard anything positive about their models.
In other words, you just had the auditory form of a position put into you to make you like them.
Yeah. But, you know, they're just a missed opportunity as far as their range goes. But lore-wise, they are really let down by their codex. If you are interested in Genestealers at all, even though, we spoil a lot of the book, most of the book, I feel like Day of Ascension is a must-read. It really helps just like characterize, and you get an understanding for the Genestealers. you understand why the choices that they make, and how they function.
Are you talking to me here or the audience?
The audience.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say I'm probably going to read this as soon as we're done here, because the front cover literally has that fucking cowboy.
Yeah, the Calamorph, Sakiri. So I did some thinking, right? And
terrifying.
Yeah.
Not for you.
A lot of Warhammer does it serve as A, being a good narrative, and 2, grimdark. Just like, is it grimdark? But like, what is better, right? The fighting the revolution and then learning it was just to feed an alien race, the panic and hopeless sadness that comes from that, or willingly walking into the slaughter, because that's the better option. And I think it's the second one. I think just narratively, listening to Day of Ascension, you go from this sad, all these people are walking into the jaws of the Predator, and then when it becomes apparent to you as the reader/listener that they know that's exactly what they're doing. They know that every single one of them dies at the end of this. It's not like, oh, and then we're gonna become Space Marines or whatever, They know, no, none of us are walking out of this alive. Every single one of us is being killed.
It's their version of a missionary mission.
Yeah.
Except they know they're going to die, but they want to still,
And, that it's better to die for them. It's better to die than continue for generations to be a resource that is used and discarded for some spreadsheet of efficiency. And as far as Grimdark goes, I think it fulfills that exact purpose. The workers of a planet choosing self-annihilation of the planet is a better future than to continue to just exist. It's just darker than, and then they got tricked. But, at the end of the book, there's a conversation with the Skitarii, and for the sake of spoilers, I won't explain it, even though, we spoiled the whole book. But it got me thinking about, stories, and, I like telling stories. I really like telling stories, and that's one of the things I enjoy about this podcast. And, when I read true stories, or tell, I'll tell real stories, whether it happened to me or other people. And I never make anything up. I never make up a fiction part of the story. I never, tell falsehoods. But I might tell things in a different order than how they actually happened, because it makes a better story. And sometimes I know things like, maybe it's a small detail or how the story really ends years after the fact and the truth got hurt. And it just hurts the magic of the story.
Yeah.
And the poetry of the story. And just the story becomes less interesting. And the world is better with magic in it. And a good story is magic in its own way. It's, as an aside, I'm not a religious person, but I am deeply fascinated by religion. I love religion as a concept. And one of the things that disappoints me about a lot of religions, modern religions, is you read their holy texts and it's filled to the brim with magic. There's so much magic in the story, but because they're trying to get people to believe it, they take out all the magic and they try to explain things scientifically and logically. And there's the problem with that. When you're saying, "Oh, the Earth is 6,000 years old," and you're all wrong for believing that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. That's fucking stupid. The dinosaurs never exist. They're a trick from Satan. But I went to a religious school, not because my family is religious, just because that's how private schools in Australia work. And, in religion class, we had a reverend, and she was our teacher. And, she tried to explain everything that Jesus did as factual scientifically. So Jesus didn't walk on water. He probably walked on a sandbar and it looked like water. Or, he didn't make all the food and bread come out. He just pre-prepared, and then the story got changed. It's like, realistically, that's probably what happened, but it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not a fun story. Tell the fun version of that story.
Yeah. On your point, it's why The King in Yellow is one of my favorite books, because you don't get to read the play itself. You only get small snippets. You don't get, it's because of this curse or this magic that makes it so that it drives you insane. It's because it's the implication of, this is all we can show you because the rest is horrifying. And you see the effects of what we can't see as the reader happening to other characters. Sometimes it's better to have a story without an explanation. That my favorite short story of all time is, I think it was the one or two sentence story where it was like, there I was alone at the end of the universe.
The 2-sentence horror story.
Man
sat alone at the last man. I think the last man sat alone at the end of the universe, and someone knocked on the door. Well, there was a knock on the door, something like that.
But imagine for all the Doctor Who fans out there. I know we've probably spoken about it several times, but that's because it's just that nice. It's such a good idea. Is midnight. Imagine if they told you.
I don't think we've talked about midnight at all on this podcast. We've talked about Doctor Who a couple times, but we haven't talked about midnight. Just aside, if you're not a Doctor Who fan, which fair, there's a lot of I've talked about. Whenever someone asks me if Doctor Who's any good, I say Doctor Who is a pretty consistently bad show with some of the best sci-fi you will ever see in your life. Like, there are episodes of Doctor Who that are phenomenal. Like, some of the best episodes of any sci-fi show ever created. And then there is, pretty consistently, it is okay to shit. But
Yeah.
Midnight, it's a David Tennant episode. Go watch it. It is amazing. It is one of the top tier, episodes.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the things where it introduces a thing and never explains it.
Unlike,
And
it's not official sequel, but sort of also a sequel, the Listen episode, where it's just like, yeah, here's a little bit of explanations. Does that really count? Never mind. Back to Midnight, where the whole time you don't know what's going on. No one knows what's going on out there because you physically cannot see out there. Otherwise, what was it, the photon rays or something?
I don't remember, but yeah, you can't look outside.
Yeah, and as you're going along, they have to take a different path than the one that's marked as safe, just to keep going on the tour. Spoilers for the episode, by the way.
I wouldn't spoil the episode. I would just leave it.
No. Yeah, just cut that bit out.
Just go watch the episode.
Yeah.
A thing happens. Yeah. A thing happens, they never explain it. And, obviously the Doctor doesn't die at the end of the episode because otherwise that would be pretty weird if they just killed the main character and went, no, the show's over. But what happens in that episode rattles the Doctor at the end of the episode. Like, they showcase him at the end of the episode and he is unsettled by the events of that episode, which does not happen in Doctor Who. Every single time he's like, oh, fun, happy stuff. And at the end of that, he's just like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay with what just happened.
It's just genuinely so good. And then you've got episodes like the one that I always hate, Love and Monsters. That's
a famously bad episode.
Yeah. I still can't listen to Mr. Blue Sky without thinking of that, even though I'm slowly getting Baby Groot to replace it.
You just gotta watch the Ghost of Tsushima clip. Anyway.
Yeah, you'll either love it or you'll hate it, but it's one of those things.
Yeah, and as the side back onto Genestealer Cults, the whole conversation with the Skitarii got me thinking about stories and the type of stories that I tell and how I like telling stories. And as we've gone on with these shows, originally it was very much me just reading the Codex / Battle Tome and getting the information and what's good and what's interesting. And then I saw the Tyranid episode. I didn't enjoy the Tyranid episode because I structured it differently, because I knew all the information. Instead of, I didn't have to I researched it obviously to make sure all of it was correct, but I picked things that I knew and I already knew the information, and I just didn't like how it came out, even though it was a perfectly cromulent episode. Like, it worked, but I didn't like how it worked. So then from then on, I've sort of moved to a more narrative focus, and we explain it more narratively, which is why this episode is structured with, I'm introducing the players, the types of Genestealers, and then we're going to get into detail about the Day of Ascension and how the Day of Ascension works. And that, so it's all sort of narrative. So these episodes have become more storytelling focused and telling a story. And in telling the story, maybe the Genestealer cults have no autonomy. Maybe they are all unwilling puppets, because that's what's implied in the Codex. But the book implies otherwise. They know exactly what they're doing, and I think that makes for a better story. So that's the story I chose to tell. I deleted every single entry of me talking about the cult brainwashing and how they didn't have autonomy. On my second pass on the script, I removed all of that from the script. So, I talk obviously about the Patriarch being able to dominate will and stuff, but it was a lot more negative, the original script, to the Genestealers, and that they're all puppets. And I don't care about that story anymore. I don't care about the Genestealers being puppets. I think they're much interesting if they know exactly what they're doing. And I think Adrian Tchaikovsky knew that. You don't write a book about the Genestealers and then at no point in time ever really, or not even that, you then at repeated points in time have the Genestealers or the cultists become aware of the situation that they're presented in. And some of them just go, yeah, no, I've always known. And the others that, aren't aware, sort of like Davian
How is it
has,
any different?
Yeah, she has a crisis of faith, and she's uncertain about which, whether Tavian, I think was his name, was telling the truth. Triskelion, sorry, was telling the truth, and she goes to the Magus and she goes to Sakiri and asks them about it, and both of them tell her, no, he's telling the truth, he's not lying, but that's the better outcome. We die is the better outcome. So she's, it sort of reinforces her of like, no, they're both right. I've already forgotten his name. Triskelion is like, no, we are dying, and that sucks, but they are right that this is better. This is better that we all die now, rather than I grow old and my children are crushed in a grinder. That the rest of my family dies being poisoned by the AdMac. It's a better story, and that's the story that I chose to tell for this episode. Was the one where the Genestealers are in control the entire time. Yeah. Anyway, that's today's episode. I was originally going to be more pretentious about it and just straight up end the episode there. But I've decided to. So we were going to do 2 Genestealer episodes back to back, as I mentioned. Where next Genestealer episode will be the cults, like the specific members of the cults and which factions, because that's usually how we do it. And we'll also get into the Imgal and the Malstrain, if you're interested in that at all. But we're not going to do that next week. Next week will be the 4th edition of Skaven, so we'll have another Skaven episode coming out next week. And I'm currently reading and writing that at the moment. I forgot to pre-order the book, and then it sold out, so I couldn't get it. And I had to wait a week for the book to come back in stock. So I've picked that up and putting the episode together now. And so next week will be Skaven. For the one guy, don't remember his name. Every week he comments, "Cool video. No new Skaven. Where's the new Skaven episode?" I think he's done it for like 3 weeks in a row, 3 or 4 weeks in a row.
And we just can't keep disappointing him.
Yeah. It's next week. They're coming next week.
It's all right. It's all right. Shh, we're almost there.
Yeah, and then that'll obviously be a smaller episode. Because it's just covering the new lore. We might recover a little bit about the Vermin Doom, even though we talk about that in the 4th edition, because it'll obviously come up. And then Genestealers.
Where I will have read that book.
Will you?
Yeah, I'm going to read it once we're done with this episode.
Okay, it's a long book.
Yeah.
If you're also reading books, read. I've started reading it, and we can do it for an episode. Ghazghkull Thraka.
Say that again.
Ghazghkull Thraka, Prophet of Dawar. Though maybe don't read it, because then you'll know more information about Gaz. Maybe read the book after. The book is really funny. It's a really funny book. I've really been enjoying the Gaz book. I'm not too far into it.
Is it that one?
I will take a look. Yeah.
Okay. I won't read that.
Yeah. I don't know when we'll do a Gaz episode. Probably when I read the book. I wasn't reading the book because I wanted to do a Gaz episode. I just wanted to read the book because someone I was watching recommended the Gaz book as being really funny. And it currently very much is. It's a really good book. As I said, I'm only an hour into it, but I do recommend it so far. But I'll probably do a Gaz episode after. I'll listen to the book. I'm not going to bother taking notes. And then I'll probably listen to it again at a 3.5 times speed, read the 6-hour book in 2 hours, and save every part that's worth noting from the notes.
And add the timestamps.
Yeah, that's why I'll be listening to it again. So I know exactly where to put the quotes. And then we'll probably do a Gaz episode, but apart from that, this has been really waffling for me to explain, hey, I need more ideas for 40k episodes. I've got a document that is fantasy, and I've got a document that is 40k. We've got a Necromunda video coming up, which I have mentioned, and that is the only episode that I have planned for 40k. So let me know what you want to cover for 40k. I kind of don't want to do the Primarchs at the moment. I would rather listen to all of their books before we do a Primarch video, because otherwise I'm just going off information from the wiki, and that's secondhand information, and I don't really like to do that. I read the sources for this, and then I I go to the wiki if I need to find locations for the sources, so I'll probably be doing the Primarch videos after I get around to listening to their books, which is why we'll probably do a Gaz episode sooner rather than any Primarch episode. But, you know, I can do some Space Marines here and there if you want a specific Space Marine faction or, you know, anything. Let me know. Same goes for Age of Sigmar videos, but as I said, I've got a lot in the pipeline. So...
Yeah, just let us know. We're ultimately at your beck and call, essentially.
Yeah, at your beck and call, because I don't know. I got ideas, but I don't have ideas, you know?
I have ideas, I just don't know which one.
Yeah, it's yeah, I also want to do a video on the Votann, and the Votann will be really easy because they have exactly one book. Someone is apparently writing a Votann like book rather than like a codex, like a book codex, not a book, like a fiction book. That'll come out at some point, and that'll be the only lore of the Votann that we got.
Finally, after so many years.
I do want to do a book on Farsight, but I'll have to read Farsight's books. As an aside, have you seen Farsight's model?
Absolutely not. I don't even know what that is.
I will keep this in because Farsight's model is one of the best models that Warhammer has ever released. Farsight model. I will send you his old model, and then I will send you his new model. So, okay. We got... No. Okay. Here's his old model. There we go. And this...
Ooh.
Get ready for a step up in quality. This is his new model.
Oh. Power Rangers Season 1. Power Rangers and the Megazord.
The problem with the Farsight model is I really want it, and I know I'm going to botch its painting job. I'm not going to do it justice. So I think it's one of the models where I'll have to pay someone to paint it for me.
Oh, God.
I bought a Saint Celestine model because I want a Saint Celestine model, but I haven't even attempted painting it because I'm like, I'm gonna botch this. This isn't gonna come out good. like I'm not a terrible painter, but I'm not going to do Saint Celestine her model justice.
Yeah, that sounds very complicated.
Yeah, the hair on this model's wrong. She's supposed to have black hair, but that's the model.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's full on fucking Gabriel from Ultra Kill vibes there.
Yeah, she's called Saint Celestine for a reason. She is a saint. Technically, she's a demon, but you know that's sort of how that works.
So is Lucifer.
Yeah. Anyway, long tangent aside. Thank you guys for watching.
We will see you in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll see you for the Skaven. Catch y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
You're here to help me edit, Sif, huh? You're here to make a lot of noise on your beanbag chair while I'm trying to edit, aren't you? Yeah? Yes. No. Sit. Paw. Good girl. Good girl. Paw. Good girl. Edit dog. Edit dog. Okay, it's time to edit, Sniffy. It's time to go back into your chair and stop annoying me.
Their body as an aside for the ad back, that's an invention, and that's a big no. That's a 100% heresy. He can't do that. That's inventing stuff. And for the guys that are all about technology, there's nothing you can do worse than invent a thing.
Oh, God. How awkward would that be if you just one day you're like, fuck, the hammerhead off my hammer fell off. I'm gonna duct tape it back on, and then someone's like,
You can repair a thing, but you can't
Make a new thing.
You can have the head of the hammer, and then the shaft of the hammer, and then you can use the holy duct tape to put the head of the hammer, strap it in. As long as you say your like 40 prayers while you do it, and then you pray to the hammer spirit, and then you apply the holy oil onto the holy duct tape to make sure that it's sturdy, then that's fine. That's not an invention. That's a repair. That's fine. But an invention, no, you can't do that. That's bad. An anarchist. What the fuck was that pronunciation of anarchist? For if we live and die for the Emperor, then the Emperor's angel shall. Fuck! I got so close. I got to the final line. Then there's a great one where I saw where it was just like, move away that author. I've got a new great best 2 sentence story, and it was a warning sign that said warning low flying owls, and then a missing poster for missing chihuahua. So warning low flying owls, warning low flying owls, missing chihuahua. The Kilomorph was a cowboy and a folk legend, a hero of the revolution fighting the authoritarian rule of the oppressed underclass. Nope, not of.